So in today's open mic interview, I have a man named Freeko who was previously a referee for Twin Galaxies, and I believe he has potential information worth sharing. But first, I want to go over how these open mic interviews work for you real quick. I'm going to ask you several questions. You can use this as a chance to clear the air about people, yourself, or call out what you consider bullshit. You can swear, you can say whatever you want openly. Just keep the racism to a small amount because I do censor it, even if I find it suggestive. I don't promote racism, which is why if it gets censored, I'm behind closed doors, and personally, I don't care what I hear. You know, if you want to talk to me privately about racism, I don't give a shit. At the end, you can ask me any questions and talk freely. So, are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, tell me your backstory and how you first got involved with TG, and can you tell me about the problems you encountered while working with TG?
Well, I'll try to keep this short because I could probably ramble on for a couple hours on this.
Feel free.
To sum things up, there was a local arcade owner by the name of Richie Knuckles that happened to, I guess, I happened to wander down the road one day, and lo and behold, I noticed, hey, wait, that's an arcade. What the hell? They didn't exist for like 20 years around here, and I just kind of happened to poke my head in there. This is probably about 2010 right now. Just kind of after a year or two of showing up, fast forward to a Christmas party, or excuse me, Christmas, Jesus, New Year's party, because that's what happens on January 1st, is New Year's, not Christmas, not second round of gifting there.
Or eggnog or anything like that.
You know, I happen to notice a few people. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go a little bit further back. Let's go to the Tron off. When Tron Legacy came out, I believe that was November of 2010. It might have been 2011. Long story short, after being at this arcade as a quasi-regular for about a year, I noticed an event. They had 3 people playing Tron for about 17 hours.
Do you recall what any of the 3 people were?
I remember 2 of them. One was David Nelson, the other was David Cruz. The third person was, well, pretty much irrelevant because they were terrible compared to the other 2. You know, the bottom line was it was David Cruz and, oh, excuse me, Donald Hayes, not David Nelson. David Nelson was there in the official Twin Galaxies referee capacity.
All right.
I'm about to turn 39, and it feels like I'm about to turn 79 because shit, I can't remember what I had for dinner last night half the time. I'm going fast, so cherish these moments while you have them. But, you know, it was an event. It was basically these 3 people over the course of about 17 hours. At the end of the day, Donald Hayes ended up setting the world record for Tron. David Cruz, who I had a good amount of time to talk with, as we basically just kind of sat on the sidelines, and I was kind of trying to egg him back on to basically take another go at the Tron machine, and he's complaining that there was something wrong with the joystick or, you know, whatever. He wouldn't play anymore. But part of what I noticed was another person playing versus Super Mario Brothers.
All right.
And this person ended up being Isaiah Johnson.
Oh. Continue.
Now, I took a great interest in this because, you know, I kind of felt some pride for the local arcade scene, and I'm kind of going, this guy's kind of hiding over here, over on the other side of the arcade, playing this machine, trying to set a record, and nobody's watching him. Not even Donald Hayes, because he was only there to watch the Tron off. Richie himself was basically half drunk, if not more. Just kind of wandering around. So I kind of took it upon myself in unofficial capacity to just kind of watch what this guy was doing.
All right.
Because, you know, I wanted to learn. I'm a console guy, so when it comes down to it, you know, arcade machines are kind of like a
portable video game on the fly in a building.
Not really, but it was kind of like,
close.
You know, the old, I put the quarter in the machine and like
Have
5
fun.
minutes later I was done.
Yeah.
You know, never really watched anybody play a game at a very high level, aside from, you know, Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat, when arcades were much more prevalent. We'd have the whole rotation of people, you know, trying to hold court over, you know, the Street Fighter 2 machine, which was usually turbo at that time, the Mortal Kombat, which was Mortal Kombat 4, and then, you know, fast forward 20 years later almost, another arcade pops up. Might have been there a little longer, but, you know, it was 20 years since I've ever been in an arcade. Another person who was there, who I actually knew from the speed game marathons they would do. I think they call them Games Done Quick, or
Yeah.
I think, but it was Andrew Gardicus. He was basically talking about the same thing with versus Super Mario Brothers, and I think he currently had the record after a little kind of digging around and just kind of chatting everybody up that was there.
All right. Out of curiosity, not to cut you off, but did Isaiah put multiple quarters into the versus Super Mario cabinet?
There were no quarters. Fun fact. The state of New Jersey, which is where this place was, you cannot put a quarter into an arcade machine. There is a public nuisance law in the state of New Jersey where you either have to have a card reader or you have the machines on free play, which was the case at the arcade. So
that's kind of weird because I did live in Jersey for some time growing up, and there was an arcade where I could put quarters in, so I'm not sure if that's the same law, but
it may have been, you know.
The main primary point that I wanted to go over was the versus Super Mario record in particular, or just like the Nintendo Play Choice 10, like, were these cabinets set to free play? And if so, was that within TG's rules when he was doing these records? And did Walter Day even know or watch or set prerequisites?
I don't know anything about the Nintendo Play Choice 10. I don't believe there was ever one of those cabinets in our arcade.
Okay.
And I say our arcade because I did become, you know, a very minor staked owner in the arcade after it closed down and reopened. But, you know, that's fast forwarding a little bit. At the time, all of the machines were set on free play. So there wasn't an issue with putting quarters in a machine. And I saw Isaiah on multiple times die on a board, or, you know, not even so much die, but take a hit in some places, and he would just kill off all the men he had and start over. I don't know if that was because people were watching him, specifically me, at that point. But, you know, the end of this story is basically near the end of the whole event, after the Tron record was set. I went to bed, went home. I had come back the next morning to kind of help clean up. And somewhere between the point at which, when I left, and well, there were still people there. I guess the arcade was left open the whole time.
Overnight?
Triforce, yeah. Well,
Alright.
it was basically a Tron-off event that basically lasts the whole weekend. So we were
Alright.
going from Saturday into Sunday at this point. And I don't know if people were at a hotel room or whatever, but there were, I would say, between 5 and 10 people left at the place when I, got back over there around, I can't give an exact time, but let's say 10 o'clock in the morning, arbitrarily speaking. It was fairly early in the morning compared to, when a typical gamer would wake up at,
Yeah.
1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But lo and behold, this Isaiah Johnson set the record, and before I could even get into the door, I happened to run into Andrew Gardicus, and I kind of asked him, what happened? Because I never saw him do really well while I was watching him.
All right.
And, he said, well, he just set the score, and, I think somebody came over after the fact to verify the score, but, without anybody watching him.
That
was it
is very sketchy, because if it was free play, could you potentially continue playing after a single play and do multiple plays? Which is against the rules, by the way, on Twin Galaxies. You could only do a single play. That's the common theme.
I'm going to have to dodge that question, because
right.
to be perfectly honest with you, I do not know if
And
it
you weren't
changes
there.
your score or resets the score if you continue. I just don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't know either, though. But, like, potentially some games could let you perhaps continue and keep your score, is what I'm saying. And if that was the
usually
case,
like a game like
Mario,
Street Fighter 2 or anything like that, it would add a 1 to the digit of the score.
Yeah.
So you'd have like a, if you win the first round, you'd have, for, sake of an even number, 25,000 points if you win that first round. But you'd have a 1 at the end of it, because that's the counter of you basically continuing the game. This versus Super Mario Brothers, I think, was 1984, and very likely that wasn't the case. But I can't answer definitively if the score resets, the score carries over, or any kind of other method. But it's very unlikely that you would continue, because your lives would get reset down to 5, and you die 5 times per the rules, you're done. But you get 100,000 points at the end of the game for each remaining life that you have stocked.
Yeah,
so if you were
I've
to
seen
continue,
there's actually a YouTuber. He got 80,000 more score than Isaiah, and it followed the TG rules. It showed the dip switches, and it was on a legitimate cabinet. What's your take on that? Or did you even know about that?
I didn't even know about that, to be honest. If I knew who it was,
they didn't reveal their name,
almost,
which made it harder.
I would kind of say, why is Twin Galaxies not recognizing this if it follows all of the rules?
There was
could this
one
be submitted
one
on,
rule.
On their behalf, basically.
If there's one rule that this person didn't follow, they didn't show their face. I don't know if that is technically considered a rule, but it said in the description that they didn't show their face and they didn't plan on acknowledging their real name.
What?
And I don't know why, but they said they followed all the TG rules, and I watched the entire clip.
That is
That's really weird, but yeah.
Because, I try to keep my real name out of things as much as possible.
Yeah, who wouldn't?
In today's day and age, let's fast forward a little bit and kind of break the chronology of things here. You know, when I basically became the person that was running Twin Galaxies, because out of the whole group of us, nobody really wanted to do it, and I'm just like, all right, you know, I guess I'll do it, and, you know, I'll manage the website. At that point, I was fundamentally, you know, what Walter Day was to the beginning of the Twin Galaxies era, although definitely not as prestigious.
You were the webmaster at that time?
I was entirely in control of the website.
Holy crap.
And I have,
that I didn't know.
I mean, I have an archived drive of everything that was given to us because it was the two people who were working on building the website, myself and a bunch of interns, basically spent about 4 to 6 months.
It takes a long while to build a website.
Trying to rebuild the score database. And then once we got all of the data back, well, where we thought it belonged, then you have to check through again and go, all right, is everything sorted correctly? Because it didn't sort from lowest time to highest, for example, in the way of like a racing game, where the idea is to set the lowest score by, you know, completing the lap or the race or the game in the shortest time possible. So it actually had the wrong people listed as the record holders for a time while we were restructuring the database. So the person who was in 10th place and had the slowest time was being listed as the record holder.
Do you think that affected the TG books that were released?
I don't think so, because...
Oh, there was a couple instances. You know, I don't recall.
Everybody really knew that the effort we were putting in was not finalized, and we went live with the score database to basically have more eyes looking at it and say, well, this game's wrong because it's a golf game and the idea is to set the lowest score. You know, this game is a racing game, so you want to have the lowest time as opposed to, you know, the biggest number wins. In the way of, you know, let's say Hubert, Tron versus Super Mario Brothers, or any game that just traditionally has a scoring mechanic of, you know, you do a thing, you get awarded points, and, you know, whoever has the most points is the winner.
Now, I've actually developed my own website, and it did take me quite a long time by myself. It's taken me years. I've been learning Java code. I've been learning everything I could along the way. It is not easy, and the fact that you even had interns to help you out with that is surprising. Just out of curiosity, this isn't not one of the questions I have listed, though, but how long were you the webmaster, or in control, or had an ACP?
I would say about 6 months.
6 months. You had an administrator control panel.
It may have been a little longer, but, you know, basically from the time where we had started to settle things down to when the Kong Off 2 happened, basically I was running Twin Galaxies and the whole, you know, zoo that it was at the time, because, you know, old people who were basically given a second lease on, you know, having at the website, you know, were basically all unbanned, and I think the consensus was that everybody needed to immediately ban Rudy Ferretti. And Rudy doesn't know this, but I actually vouched for him on multiple occasions because at the end of the day, I really respect the guy.
I do too. I feel like he's a great NES gamer, but
you
I don't know what everybody's problem
At the end
with
of the day, he
him
might
is.
be the villain, but, you know, every hero needs a villain, from my point of view. So, you can't put somebody on a pedestal and say, well, full disclosure, Billy Mitchell was part of our Twin Galaxies. So, he was basically propped up as this hero, and I'm kind of going, well, why don't you allow, kind of like a bad boy, as it were, to basically be the villain? And of course, that idea got shot down on a, one yes vote to, everybody else basically voting no. And, at the end of the day, unfortunately, Rudy kind of got, just banned on general principle, and, I could not undo it.
Which was a behavioral ban, which, currently is not a TG rule, which makes no sense.
Well, even, I won't even go into, this administration's banning of Rudy. I just have nothing to do with that. So
yeah.
I can't offer an opinion aside from, I respect the guy. I think he's basically getting vilified for no good reason.
And he's getting angry about it too, which makes him look like more of a villain. But you have to understand, if anybody was under attack for their records and being questioned, like, anytime I've asked Rudy anything, he says, oh, well, I have a video of it, I'll show it, I'll do a live performance. I don't think he'd hide anything.
Well, that's why I respect him.
Yeah, same
because
here.
You have so many other people that are like, well, I don't remember.
Or I won't show my records, a.k.a. Isaiah.
It's a secret strategy. It's a lot of what you get. But,
Like, it's not the fucking 90s anymore, it's almost 2020. Screw secrets, strats, and all that stupid stuff. Like, who really gives a shit? Just do what you would like.
I mean, personally, I have an opinion of that.
On secret strats.
About secret strategies.
Alright.
I kind of, as a referee, I don't mind the whole secret strategy sort of thing. But if no one else knows what the secret strategy is, there's no way to verify either the authenticity or legitimacy of the strategy. Record. So, if a person sent a video to me, and I then outsourced it to the two other referees, David Nelson and Stephen Boyer, at the time, if I didn't verify it myself, I didn't really care about getting the money for the submissions, so most of them got sent to Dave and Steve. But I remember Roy Schilt, of all people, and I verified this record myself under kind of protest, because I argued for about 3 hours with Richie in his own house, and I'm going, there's no track for Missile Command that states, a difference between the larger or the smaller trackball. And I had to sit through another 3 hours of him playing this game, and I'm just like, why am I verifying a random score? And Richie turns around, well, I'm going to give him the world record for the, I guess, the small trackball or the big trackball. I remember watching the video, but again, it's one of those things where I just don't entirely remember it. But I do remember Roy saying the same phrase like 150 times throughout the whole of the video. And it just kind of made me chuckle every time he said it.
And what was that phrase?
Detroit Motor City. Yeah, exactly. Like, he'd finish a board, and then he'd just go, Detroit Motor City, out of nowhere. And I'm just like... I chuckle for a little bit as the board's kind of going through, awarding the bonus points, and resetting for the next board. And, after about 3 hours, he finally lost his last city, and I'm just like, okay, you know, I've watched this video,
Oh,
you know,
man.
about 2.5 times over because I focus on the beginning of the game where the game's starting up, and I focus a lot on the showing of the board because I want to make sure that it is a legitimate board all the same. So I don't just, you know, put the video on and, all right, well, it's 3 hours, so great. I'm just going to watch this for 3 hours. I watch specific parts of it over and over again, and if I feel something is out of whack, you know, well, I can go back to it later on my little notepad. I go, okay, at 1 hour and 10 minutes, this happened. I need to see if, oh, excuse me, if this is, you know, a legitimate strategy or anything like that.
All right. What do you think about Jace Hall running TG, and do you think he needs what do you think he needs to do?
Sell it back to me.
Straight up?
Yeah.
Sell
I mean,
it back to you.
You know, I really feel like this is kind of just like his little toy that he, you know, oh, this was a neat little thing, and then, you know, he gets it, and then just kind of puts it on the shelf and forgets about it.
Lets it dust a little bit.
And, you know, but, you know, that's just kind of my opinion. I could be proven wrong. I don't know how much of a hand he has directly into things. I did not follow the Todd Rogers or Billy Mitchell dispute cases because I was on a 5-year non-disclosure agreement.
I feel like, yeah, it just, you know, quote me on this. Quote me on this. I feel like any time that Jace comes into a dispute or takes over something or talks or says anything public, I feel like it's because he's taking a personal interest and jumps right into it. Like, he took over the dispute because David Hawkset just had that private conversation on Contra 3. That's the only reason why he took it over.
Just that private conversation. In full disclosure, I actually had a conversation with Dave in private as well.
Oh.
It was just in general, but I actually suggested that he recused himself, and I guess he talked it over with Jace, and that was the result of it, because, you know, as, you know, I was fundamentally, you know, what Dave Hawkset is right now to Twin Galaxies. I guess I would consider myself
The custodian.
more, you know, a head custodian, but I mean, I had access to everything. You know, I'm not, you know, a dictator, ruler of the world, because again, you know, most everything that even we did was always left up to a vote, and we'd, you know, every Tuesday night have our little conference call, and, you know, those who didn't really give a shit would never participate, because, you know, somebody like Jordan Adler, Billy Mitchell, they were both owners of Twin Galaxies, but at the end of the day, I can tell you that neither were part of these calls, because, you know, neither of them really had any stake into what Twin Galaxies would be. Jordan Adler basically bought it as, you know, a toy for Richie Knuckles to play with.
Yeah,
so, you know, that's kind of like, all right, well, Richie isn't really taking much of a interest in the website part of things, but he's doing a lot of live stuff. And, you know, I ended up having to, well, of my own design, sit through George Lutz playing Hubert for about 85 hours at our arcade.
Oh, man.
Which was interesting.
I don't think I could watch somebody play for more than 20 minutes.
Well, you know...
Unless I had a chair.
Well, I had the whole arcade to basically, you know... one of the other people I work with was Ed the Killscreen, who unplugged the Qbert machine on one of George's previous record attempts. and I kind of went to George. I'm like, look, I know what you need to do and not to do, and I know I got thrown out of the arcade last time for suggesting what you need to do. You listen to me, we'll break this record. I will remain objective as a Twin Galaxies referee, because at the time we did control Twin Galaxies. And, you know, I may indirectly interfere by helping where it's needed, but I never touched the joystick, touched the arcade machine.
The ultimate insult is to unplug the power supply on a game.
Well, we made sure to, well, one, Ed was banned from the premises from, once I got there, Tuesday, it was Valentine's Day of 2013, I believe.
It's like the most dick thing you could do.
Well, it was completely, you know, accidental, because he was trying to unplug something else.
Oh.
And happened to just unplug the wrong thing. But, you know, turning a machine off is a real easy way to kill a game score.
Yeah.
You know, it was a complete accident, but, you know...
I thought this was on purpose, my bad.
No. Oh, no. I think he would have been tarred, feathered, beaten, crucified, and then lit on fire.
Yeah. Because at one point in time, I don't remember the instance, but somebody at AGDQ was accused of pulling the plug on one of the games before they left or something, and they went after them for it. I don't remember what, but it was privately off stream.
Games Done Quick is its own little nightmare that I just... You know,
I don't follow suit every year.
I were not to... You know, it's kind of like the troll of the speed gaming industry.
Yeah.
And the less attention I bring to it,
the better.
I think the better.
I
but,
agree.
you know, at the end of the day, I want to try to almost get back on track. The end of the day, 5 days later, George sets the record, plays for about 8 to 10 hours longer, and, you know, Richie jumps on the next morning. George Lutz's score is confirmed at, I think it was, you know, 37 million, something like that. And I'm like, Richie, you can't do that.
During your
I need
time...
to review a lot of the tape. Because not only was I there, but it was Twitch streamed and also recorded by another camera. So that way we had 3 different things we could go back to verify everything.
Oh, wow.
1, I was there. 2, the Twitch stream. And 3, the 2 video recording, you know, mini cams that were recording everything as well.
See, that's the way to verify. Because then
So,
you know, you'll find out one way or another if somebody did a record.
Because I wanted to make sure that every record I put in
Was legit.
or was input by any one of us was unquestioned. It was legitimate to the highest degree. There was a videotape, a DVD, whatever you wanted
Film-proof.
to say.
Yeah.
You know, even if it was a live thing, like going back to the Tron off a year previous, or it'd be a little more than, you know, about a year and a quarter. Every one of those machines had a webcam on, and David Nelson was there. So everybody was able to watch what was going on while they were playing.
During your time as a member of TG, when did you believe that Walter Day had lost credibility in your eyes, and describe why?
It was an Icon Gallery event.
Icon Gallery?
It's, I think, Ottumwa, Ottawa. It was basically just kind of like a get-together for everybody.
Okay.
It was basically, you know, a giant waste of my time to go out there. But, you know, people like George Lutz, who had set the record for Hubert, Rudy Ferretti, Tim McVeigh, who I had... fun fact, if you look up the YouTube trailers for Man vs. Snake,
Okay.
when they do the, I guess, the promo trailer, you go and they zoom into the back of someone at a nibbler machine. That's actually me. It was done at our arcade with a professional group of people filming specifically for that purpose, the Man vs. Snake documentary. And I remember it was, I believe his name is Andy Seckler. He did the Battlestar Galactica remakes. And I was in nerd heaven because I loved the Battlestar Galactica remakes. I was like a 34-year-old fucking 12-year-old fanboy looking at like one of the people I had idolized in the world. And here I was, after everything was all said and done. I had to be like the worst fucking clinger ever. But him and I were at the restaurant next door, which unfortunately isn't there anymore. And we just talked for hours about the most random shit ever. And it was fantastic.
That sounds like a ball. But what about the Walter Day's credibility, though?
But, you know, to go back to Walter, sorry about sidetracking on that little story.
It's
but,
fine.
You know, I mean, I have a bunch of little stories here and there. It's kind of like, you know, a little...
Along the way.
Stories, you know. It's like chapter 1, you know, I kind of show up at the arcade for the first time, you know. Chapter 2, you know, I start to show some aptitude at, you know, fighting games, you know. But let's fast forward back to that icon gallery.
Okay.
You know, Richie, George, and I meet up at the arcade, and Richie, you know, decides, well, fuck it, I'm just going to drive the whole way out to Ottumwa, Iowa. And I'm like, you're fucking insane, bro. But, you know what? Cocaine's a hell of a drug. I don't know exactly what he was on, but he was hopped up on something. Because, you know, as a school bus driver myself, there's no way in hell I could drive that long at a consistent basis. But, you know, he pulled it off. I'll give him that. You know,
is this like Desert Bus, where he drives 8 hours?
Oh, it was... I think it was about 14 hours to get out to Iowa. Because I go out to Columbus, Ohio all the time for a convention every year, and that takes
it's
me,
like double.
You know, about
15.
8 hours to get out there.
Oh, I was going to say
But,
15.
You know, well...
Completely wrong.
With how much I stop because I travel alone, it just about does take 15 hours.
But anyway, continue about Walter.
You know, long story short, we get out there, get to the icon gallery. Tim McVeigh confronts me because I had just done kind of like a little burn video after we were done doing the Nibbler filming.
All right.
And it was fresh in his mind because this happened maybe like a month after the Icon Gallery meetup happened, maybe a month after we did the Man vs. Snake stock footage shooting.
Yeah.
So I had to... I kind of consider myself a big boy. I mean, I'm 5'7", but I'm about 240. Tim's bigger than me in every way you could measure. I was trying to avoid a fight, and thankfully, you know, calmer heads prevailed, and at the end of the day, you know, we took a couple photos, and, you know, we were able to laugh it off at the end of the day. But later on, since I was basically in charge of filming everything that happened at the Icon Gallery, I happened to walk around and run into Walter and just kind of talk to him.
All right.
I don't know if it's kind of like an ability I have, but when I read someone the first time I kind of talk to them, I can tell, all right, this is a good guy. This is somebody who hates my guts. This is somebody I can't trust. You know, that sort of thing. When I talked to Walter and just kind of asked him a couple questions, I'm going, this guy has to have, like, not skeletons in the closet, but, like, an entire fucking locker room full of lockers that have nothing but fucking skeletons in it. Just from the way he was evading every question I was trying to ask him.
Can you recall the questions and his answers?
Unfortunately, no, because this happened about 5 years ago.
Okay, yeah, no, I can understand that.
It's kind of like, you know, one of those things where it's like, if I could erase this thing from happening from my memory, I would. Because for me, you know, as the current holders of Twin Galaxies, everybody was taking shots at me.
Ooh.
You know, since I was basically the face of Twin Galaxies at that point, along with Richie. But Richie never really exposed himself to the general public like I did, because I didn't mind, you know, hearing what
People
the
had
lay
to say.
person had to say, or somebody from a derivative scoreboard site had to say. You know, I wanted to know what they thought, because I can take criticism and then apply that criticism to improve going forward, which I don't think other people inside of the ownership group really agreed with. You know, they just say, well, I'm going to stomp my feet like a little bitch, and I'm going to do it my way, and option 2 is, well, fuck you.
Wow.
And, you know, a lot of that was prevalent through the whole time that our iteration of Twin Galaxies was functioning. Because we'd have, you know, to go back to the conference calls, you know, there were at any point, you know, 8 of us on a conference call, and none of us could establish any kind of consensus on what we wanted to do. So somebody would just kind of turn around and stomp their feet and go, well, I'm just going to fucking do it this way, and that's going to be the end of it then.
Huh.
So it was, you know, a big problem, because Twin Galaxies never really had a focused direction. Because somebody wanted to take things in one direction. I wanted to go in another direction. Somebody else wanted to go in another direction entirely. It's kind of like taking, you know, a piece of, like, silly putty, and, you know, 4 or 5 people just all grab onto it and try to stretch it out as far as they can until it finally just breaks.
Yeah.
And that's what, you know, ended up happening at the Kong Off 2.
In a previous conversation we had over Discord, you stated you kept track of Isaiah Square Johns and how EMP rigged these tournaments. Can you go into details in your findings with them? And yeah.
Without my little notepad, I can't go into too many details. But there's
well, if you want to take your time to go grab them, feel free.
Well, I don't think my store. It's a little late, and the storage site where I have everything is already closed for the night, so I couldn't go grab everything. And
all right, that's fine. That's
again,
fine.
it would be like, you know, me just rambling off dates and times of places where I went and tournaments that were rigged. But at the end of the day, Guinness had awarded Empire Arcadia basically a... Now, of course, it was Walter Day who, you know, awarded this because when we had Twin Galaxies, he jumped ship to Guinness because of there was turmoil between Guinness and Twin Galaxies where the relationship between the two companies was severed.
Ooh.
Which is something that leads into this particular story, so that's why I'm bringing it up here.
All right, go over it.
Because we charged for submissions, you know, I think it was like $25 for an hour, and then it was like $10 more for every hour after that. Guinness turned around and said, submitting a world record should be free. As such, we're going to sever our relationship with Twin Galaxies. You know, it was public, it was ugly, and I'm really, you know, cliff notesing the whole conflict at the time. But, you know, at least everybody on the Twin Galaxies side of things was like, all right, well, we're just going to post, you know, Twin Galaxies Book of World Records instead of, you know, Guinness Book of World Records for the video game edition. So we didn't really care about that because at the end of the day, we were the ones that had the information. And this was, I believe, 2013. So I don't think there's a Guinness World Records Gamers edition for that particular year. But long story short, most everything was just a rehash of everything that had happened, and it's more like a chronological what the hell do they call that? Almanac of scores anyway?
Yeah.
Because there was maybe 50 scores that we put in to the database that weren't already there from what we restored. But, you know, long story short, we'll fast forward back to the question that you had asked.
Yeah.
Guinness took it upon themselves to award world records. And one of the world records that they had awarded was Empire Arcadia for having the most tournament wins as a esports team or something like that.
Yeah.
And I kind of went, well, who the fuck vetted this information? Who was there to verify these tournaments even existed in the first place? Oh, wait, I was. Because of, you know, one little shit biscuit in particular. His name is Philip Atkinson, but he's probably more known as KDZ, I think is his gamer tag. There's a place called 8 on the Break. I could look it up real quick, and you might hear me
8
typing on my keyboard because 8 on the Break.
It's fine. You type, been taking all this time.
I just want to, you know, it was, yeah. I just wanted to give the right city, and looking it up, it's Dunellen.
Thebreak.net? Is this the...
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Dunellen, New Jersey?
They do a competition. At the time, it was Street Fighter 4, Soul Calibur 4. You know, they do fighting game competitions every week. And every once in a while, maybe once a month, I'd kind of poke my head in and just kind of, you know, wander around, see what's kind of going on. And this was while I was the head of
They
Twin
don't really
Galaxies.
look like an arcade. I'm looking at photos, and it looks more like a restaurant that just has an arcade as a side.
Like, you know, if you...
It's a mom and pop.
Oh, it's definitely a mom and pop shop. It's, I mean, I know the place inside and out because I've been there. If you took kind of like a... It'd be about the size of like a big, like, trailer home.
Gotcha.
If you cut it in half, the one section would be where they have like the little bar and like bar food, like almost like a bowling alley where you can get a burger, fries, you know, stuff like that. The other side would be where, like, pool tables and pinball machines were. And then if you took another trailer and just kind of attached it to the side of that, that's where all their arcade machines were.
All right. Yeah, I think I can get it now.
You know, I mean, it's a really shitty way to establish a picture, but...
The size of it, I got you.
You know, that's really about the size of the place. They had a really fucking huge Street Fighter 4 cabinet that I think, you know, it might have been run off of a system, but the arcade board might have been that, but it was kind of like a competition cabinet. Player 1 was on the left side and had one group of 6 buttons, a start button, and their joystick. And they had like a 50-inch screen in front of them, you know, about 5 feet away. And player 2 was on the other side of that because the screens were basically back-to-back.
Yeah, I think I get you.
The monitors were obstructing the view of each of the players. So you could see the screen and your side of it, but you couldn't see what the other player was doing because there's this 50-inch fucking giant monitor in between them. And that's how they would do their Street Fighter 4 tournaments. And they'd dig out the PlayStation 3 for Soul Calibur 4.
Could you describe why it was rigged?
Well...
Obviously being mom and pop.
Well, yeah.
It's not like official EVO tournament or Splash or anything major or
absolutely
Clash.
Not. You know, I go in there one day and I'm just like, oh, well, I'm kind of interested in Calibur runs the tournament. It's KDZ. But, you know, I ask him, it's like, well, what do you have to do for these tournaments? Do you do, like, commentary or anything like that? And he's like, well, I don't know who you are. I'm like, perfect. Yes. He has no idea who the fuck I am. And, you know, I kind of just sort of, I'm not as good as these people that are playing. I think I'm going to practice and, you know, I'm just going to watch and see what I can pick up. There were 3 people from Empire Arcadia that were in the bracket that particular time. There were 14 people, if I recall correctly. Want to take a guess as to when any of the Empire Arcadia members faced each other?
Probably once or twice.
Yeah. They didn't touch each other until the winner's semifinal, where 3 of the 4 people that were in the winner's semifinal were Empire Arcadia members. And there was another guy who was, you know, he could hang with them, but just wasn't good enough.
So basically, these were rigged brackets that they were winning because their members were separated from actual people. So they were playing against actual people and their members never got touched.
They're basically eliminating everybody else until all of the Empire Arcadia members left. And then you have Isaiah posting on Facebook, Empire Arcadia Battle Log, 8 on the break. EMP KDZ, first place. EMP Sanford Kelly,
That's
second
a circle jerk and a half if I've never fucking heard it. I'm
So,
sorry to say
you know,
that right out in the open.
Well, hey, you're basically, you know, saying exactly what I'm thinking as well. Because Empire Arcadia is running the tournament through this 8 on the break place and rigging the brackets so that their Empire Arcadia players don't meet each other until
the very end when they've already won.
Where, you know, you've basically eliminated everybody else or the maximum number of people you can until you're just sort of forced to go up against each other. And then, you know, oh, well, we took first, second, and fourth because some other guy happened to knock one of them out in the third, fourth, you know, the loser's bracket draw. Because it was all double elimination. There was money on it, too.
Now, if 8 on the break, the owners came forward and wrote a statement, would that be able to go to Guinness and probably have his record removed for that?
Well, my own testimony should be enough.
Yeah.
Because I was there, but, you know, at the end of the day, the 8 on the Break owners were just fucked off behind the snack bar, you know, not knowing what was going on. And they admitted as much to me that they're like, well, we just let
People come in and eat and do whatever.
KDZ, you know, run the tournament because he knew what he was doing more so than anybody else. And, you know, I kind of, you know, all right, you know what, this might have been, you know, an aberration.
You know, I compare this as to, like, if you were to go to, like, a fucking candy store and they had, like, an arcade crane machine, you went in there and had tournaments over it. It's like, this isn't fucking EVO where, you know, there's an unbiased bracket set up and it's official and it's documented. This is in a small little fucking bowling alley bathroom where somebody's having a tournament with the next person in the stall who could take the longest shit.
I mean, it's like, you know, hey, look, I won Friday Night Magic. Let's, you know, hey, if I go to this store and you go to that store and we both win Friday Night Magic and we call ourselves a team, does that mean, you know, we should run to Guinness and, well, we've won the most Friday Night Magics and we have all these fucking foil Friday Night Magic cards to prove it. We want to be in the record book for, you know, bullshit.
Wow.
It's like, what the fuck is this? But,
all right.
You know,
all right.
At the end of the day, every other time I would kind of show up at 8 on the Break, I would go up to KDZ and I'm like, do you know who I am yet? And he's like, no. And I'm like, how the fuck do you not know who I am yet when the person who's taking all of the credit for these wins knows who the fuck I am and should have warned you by now that, you know, I even went to Isaiah himself a couple years later and I'm like, look, I know you rigged all these fucking tournaments, but, you know, since I was so sour about losing Twin Galaxies at that point, I'm just like, I don't really give a fuck. But, you know, he gave me one of his little signed cards and, you know, gave me one for KDZ, which I've kept to this day in my wallet, and they're all beat to shit. But, you know, it's kind of like that little memory of, you know, days gone by. But here's one of the better collusion stories.
All right.
It was a place in Fort Lee called, I believe, Local Battles. It was a League of Legends tournament, 3-on-3, ARAM rules, which means it's 3 randomly assigned champions on your team, and you basically have one lane. I don't know the League of Legends you are, but basically, you know, it's my 3 guys are on the left side, and the objective is to destroy the base of the other team on the other side. You know, but the game itself is irrelevant. Another double elimination bracket, and there's a big prize for whoever wins the tournament in in-game currency that you can use to unlock characters, skins, basically a lot of convenience items. And the winners were going to get 59,000 RP, which I think was the equivalent of about $50 if you translated it from, you know, what it would cost to buy that much of the in-game currency, which was RP, Riot Points. Lo and behold, guess who's running the tournament?
Who?
KDZ. Yup.
Oh, wow. All right. I gotta drop this next question, and you can ask me any question, because we're shooting to an hour, and I don't want to try to jump over that.
Okay.
Tell me a bit about your thoughts on the Contra 3 dispute for Isaiah's score with the claim of the 1% rule, and do you think TG should wipe all of his records for excessive leeching and cheating?
I'm going to say that just from what Isaiah has put forward publicly, he's a liar.
That's true.
You know, it's been debunked by, I believe, you, Tipster. I think there's more than enough information that shows that he's lying. He's trying to protect what I can only assume is an illegal strategy, and I've not been able to go back into the archives to see if when exactly the rule of excessive leeching was put into place. I think it was done after the fact to protect his score.
Yeah.
Of, you know,
Continue.
nobody being able to max out the game the same way he did. He claims he did it in an hour and a half or an hour and 5 minutes. And that was also something that I questioned him about at a New Year's event where there were 4 people left in the arcade because the arcade was... Now, this is Richie Knuckles' arcade, just for context. It was on Route 12 at the time, the first time, and this was before we took over Twin Galaxies, and I was still kind of in, like, the starry-eyed kid who wanted to set records phase. I wasn't, you know, Freeko, the Twin Galaxies, you know, referee, or, you know, basically the person running Twin Galaxies, you know, as the face of Twin Galaxies, anything like that at the time. That didn't happen yet. And I actually looked to him and I said, you know, there's a little table, you know, one of the tables you see that gets smashed on wrestling all the time. You know, one of those tables where all the food was for the New Year's party, there's 3 people sitting at it. Myself, Isaiah, and Lance Eustace.
Just the 3 of you.
John Salter was also in the arcade, but he was the DJ and basically walled himself behind his DJ equipment and was sleeping behind a bunch of arcade machines at the time. So I have no idea if he heard anything that Lance, Isaiah, and I were talking about.
All right.
And 2 of the things that I had explicitly asked him about were, how do you max out the score on Contra 3, and how do you max out the score on Streets of Rage 2? And
so you asked him a question about Streets of Rage 2 before I even brought it up.
Oh, yeah. I've known...
How long ago was this? What year?
This was New Year's Day 2012.
Holy shit, that's 6 years ago.
Yeah. And basically, he said, well, you can just basically play through Streets of Rage 2 and not die and max out your score. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, at the time, I didn't know enough about the game to, you know, call bullshit. But, you know, at the end of it all, you know, I think his Streets of Rage 2 might be legitimate, because there's not any point where there's, like, enemies that constantly come out of a door until you move forward. The game progresses you on rails, and, you know, I don't think that particular score is really bullshit, but, you know, I'm kind of going from an uninformed opinion. I don't know enough about the game to really say this game's legitimate or this game's not. But when he described Contra 3,
all right,
he didn't say anything about the 1%, and I believe he had just got done submitting his score for the max out score, because he said something like his record was like 5,400,000 previously.
All right, so this is before his max out.
No, his max out score was a verified score.
All right.
Because I asked him about it. I'm like, how the hell did you max this game out? Because this game, I kind of had enough of a knowledge of the game because I liked the Contra games, but I I was not
A huge
at a
Contra
level,
fan and not at a
you
level
know,
to play it like
I
that
wasn't it was a game that I rented
for fun and the challenge.
because that's what I did for most of the games I had. I have Final Fantasy IV. I had Final Fantasy VI. I had a lot of RPGs that I would go back to and play a lot. But when it came to other games like that, I'd just kind of play it, beat it, and okay, scratch it off the list. What's the next game at the rental store that I could get and play through and not waste $50 on and instead waste $3 on? And I kind of went, well, I'd play through and I'd get, like 4 million or so. How the hell do you get double that? And he told me that on the last stage, you play in a suboptimal way to extend the boss fight as much as possible.
So
and
leeching.
I think he said, well, at the time, I didn't really know. In hindsight, I certainly think so.
But anyway,
because
what was he
I've gone
saying?
back,
I'm just curious.
He had said that he did not mention the 1%. He said that you basically play the game in a manner that you almost restart the level. And I couldn't quite understand what he was talking about with that. And I'm like, are you talking about, like, the difference between, like, normal and hard? And he's like, yeah. Because you play through normal mode and then you play through hard. Excuse me.
That's fine.
But at the end of it, again, this is a conversation from 6 years. And believe me, if I could remember it like it was yesterday, I'd, sell my soul. Because I could go and, on the dispute page go, you know what, I had this conversation with Isaiah and Lance because they were both right there. They were both actively engaging me in the conversation because, I was just a starry-eyed fanboy at that point. And I just wanted to learn what I could. And Isaiah was basically, teaching me, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do. And if I could recall that conversation with more clarity right now.
Do you recall what the TG rules were for that game at the time?
I didn't really know, because I just kind of looked at the score and saw 9999. And I'm like,
oh my fucking God.
I didn't really look at the rules because it was like, well, I'm not going to submit for this game, so why should I look at the rules? What's the point of submitting?
By the way, that was my last question, so if you want to ask me like 3 questions when you're done, you're free to do so, and then that's it. That's how this works.
All right. Well, I do have at least 1, if not 2 questions, and it might, evolve into a third.
Go nuts.
At the end of the, I just want to, finish my little Contra 3 thing. And, basically he told me right then and there, it's like, you basically play the brain so you don't, you last as long as you can against that boss, and that's how you score your points, was about the only real thing that I remembered from that conversation. But to ask you one question.
All right.
How do you feel about Twin Galaxies in general and the, I guess, what's the proper word to use here? Not authenticity of the scores, but more like legitimacy of the scoreboard.
Well, when I went to go look up Ocarina of Time, because that's a game I normally play religiously like crazy, they have many different scores for like fishing and all this other stuff. An archery minigame, and I'm just like, what the hell? I'm just like, wouldn't a game like that matter if you're doing it in a challenge mode with a mod, or like something that's like fan-based, or just like speedrunning? But then it's like you have these games up there that are weird, and then to top that off, on top of the authenticity and how I feel about TG, I guess, like, the fact that I've only been on here for about a month, and there's been people like Todd, Rogers, and Billy, and Isaiah, and they've been fraudulent, they've been scamming, they've had these activities behind them that they've done off-scene, and it's just disgusting that Jace doesn't want to put a rule in place and reopen behavior disputes, which, you know, I don't understand why Rudy Ferretti was banned. To me, I'm fucking baffled.
Well, I do. And, you know, I have firsthand experience with this.
All right.
And one of the little stories that I never got to tell, because I just kind of veered away from it, you know, this was one of the many chapters of, and this one directly relates to Rudy. I had actually called up Rudy and kind of messed with him specifically, just to rile him up, because somebody had hacked the website, I think, or thought they had hacked the website. And I called up Rudy, and I was like, all right, well, it was a loss of, where Rudy was located. Please remove any, you know, I don't want to, you know, reveal where he may or may not be.
I'll mute it. It's fine.
Okay, so just make sure you get rid of that little accidental slip-up, if you would, please.
That's fine.
I had called Rudy to kind of rile him up because I wanted to establish him as the villain of Twin Galaxies. I wanted him to be acknowledged. I wanted him to be acknowledged as the villain. I wanted his accomplishments to be recognized. I wanted him to get the...
You wanted him to be like the Ganondorf of Zelda.
That I think he deserved. Of course, you know, I met a lot of resistance with this, but where he put the nail in his own coffin was an episode of Arcade Culture that we were doing, and I called up Rudy and wanted to interview him, and it was kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing, and I don't think Rudy knew about it, aside from I kind of said, look, we might be calling you, and he just went off on Kat Despira and a bunch of other people, and we basically muted him to the point where nobody could hear him at that point. And it was just a giant disaster because Richie and I were basically Twin Galaxies, and we had to, you know, issue a formal apology to Kat Despira over what Rudy had said on that Arcade Culture episode. And let's just say that it caused a bit of a divide that, you know, ended up having, you know, a lot more implications going forward, you know, like I had mentioned with the Kong Off 2, you know, being the, you know,
so it was still behavioral.
Yeah, it was behavioral. It was not anything to do with him hacking the database, because, to be honest, I have no idea who even tried it. But, you know, I kind of used the opportunity to try to leverage my own agenda. And I kind of learned, well, that's going to blow up in my face if I try that shit again.
Yeah, that
and
obviously
speaking
wasn't
of that,
too smart, but...
I mean, since you've been with Twin Galaxies, you know, on the site for a month or so, do you kind of have any kind of agenda? Because I see you going in hard against Isaiah here.
My agenda, if I had one... Well, how do I put this? I have 3 goals. Well, not really goals, but like more like codes that I live by. And it kind of goes with natural selection, somewhat. I wouldn't go that crazy about it. There's 3 people that I hate in the world. People that use their friends and family for drug money. That's number 1. It's not too high up there on the list. Number 2, women that lie that they're pregnant and, you know, are lying about a human life. That's pretty scummy. But the worst one of all of them, people that lie about false rape accusations and fucking pedophilia to ruin somebody's career and put them in jail falsely for God knows how long, probably for life. Like, there's stories that, like, men have gotten out of jail after 20 years when the person that accused them confesses the truth, it's fucked. And the fact that Isaiah went live and witch hunted Princeton over $1,000 fucking dollars, to me, is just fucking petty. The guy is the biggest slug on the planet. I'm not gonna lie about that.
Who owed who the money?
Isaiah owes Princeton $1,000, roughly, for plane tickets from Paris and another player.
Oh, I think I've heard parts of that story.
This
but,
was over a year ago, but he's never paid him a dime, and he's recently received over $1,000 from one donation. So there's no reason why he can't pay him at this point. Fucking none.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that are going to, I don't think it's.
If I have one more goal, to show my my ambition and what I'm planning on going with this, which, by the way, I'm intoxicated as fuck if it is not shown or if I'm not stuttered at least once. I will say that flat out here. Okay, so good. I'm honestly truthful, and I try to do my interviews as best as I can while I'm fucked up if I am. So, the only other, little vendetta or thing that I'm doing here, I want to correct Jace. And, I want to make it completely clear to everybody in Twin Galaxies that cheating and behavioral are the same fucking thing. And that's something that Jace and even Walter, every other fucking owner of Twin Galaxies, other than you, I guess, doesn't understand that cheating and behavioral are the same fucking thing. When you really break it down, I think behavioral disputes need to return and be permanent. Anything that's said off-site that affects TG's image, like, let's say if I made a fucking video right now that said straight up, Twin Galaxies can suck my cock, although I would never make something like that. Or what if I made a video that said straight up, Guinness can suck my cock? Would I not be banned for defaming them? Yeah, I should be, because I'm being an asshole towards the people that support my records that I support. Now, why would I do that? Or would I do that right now? No, I'm not. But if Isaiah is going out on his own fucking YouTube channel saying word for word, if Twin Galaxies thinks that if they don't show scientific evidence, they're corrupt, then
they were corrupt. I mean, there's
still a chance that shit can get fixed. Let's pretend they're not trying to fix it, which they are. Chances are they're going to fix it.
It was something that I would have liked to have done on my own, because there's a whole bunch of other people that are illegitimate. I mean, I would challenge that second place Qbert score of, I think, like 33 million from 1983. I'd challenge a bunch of Rodrigo Lopez's Zelda scores, because I think they're bullshit.
I think any referee score shouldn't exist. But it's really hard for me to say that, because a lot of people are going to get behind that and say, well, what if there was legitimate people and it was at a live arcade in front of other people? But it's like, if there's no video, it's hard to say for a fact that it was legitimately done.
Let's go back to the Tron-off. If Isaiah had set a record and I was standing there watching it the whole time,
then it would have been legit.
Be enough? Because I have no tie to him, but, the only tie you could say I have is, to the arcade, but even then, at the time, I was just, a face in the crowd. Do you think there needs to be multiple methods of verification?
Yes.
Or do you say...
there always needs to be more than referee. That's my opinion.
Turn around and say, okay, these are all the legacy scores. They're going to be.
It's hard. It's hard to respect the legacy of the old days with referee verification, and the reason why I say this is look at what Todd Rogers did with the fucking coffee stain photo. That was a ref verification method. Really?
Yeah.
A fucking photo with a coffee stain on it. Like, come on. Now.
Yeah.
Anybody can make up anything when it's referee verification at that point. Isaiah could go into the fucking dispute right now and say that Lance was wearing a clown outfit and was eating a hot dog while watching him play the fucking game. And we'd all believe it, because that's the statement. You know, something ridiculous.
There's nothing to disprove it.
Exactly.
But I mean, there's multiple times where...
And Jace's ideology, which pisses me off, is we need to preserve the old records at all times. Like, dude, get out of your bubble. Like,
yeah.
You own this huge company that has huge possibilities, and you want to focus on fucking Fortnite.
Well, yeah, because he was...
And H1Z1 and shit like that.
Disclosure. I mean, he was, like, the chief operating officer of the Echo Fox esports organization. So, you know, the Echo Fox team of Fortnite, you know, is probably what makes him his money.
That's true.
I don't think, you know...
But, like, it has nothing to do with Twin Galaxies because it's all old school stuff.
Well, that's very true, but Twin Galaxies doesn't necessarily need to be all old school stuff.
I also just want to claim this to be, you know, completely valid. I have nothing against Jace, it's just his ideology needs to kind of change to improve TG. I'm pretty sure you can get behind that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why I say, you know, the first thing he needs to do is sell it back to me. But, you know, because I would have a much more hands-on approach, and I'd be able to actually do everything that, you know, I had to fight with a bunch of other people because nobody really shared a vision of what Twin Galaxies was supposed to be. And, you know, going back to Isaiah, one of the things that I didn't tell you was there's 2 times where at the arcade, Isaiah set the record score. The first was at the Tron-Off when I magically had disappeared for a while and nobody was watching him specifically.
All right.
And the second time he came back, I think it was about 6 to 8 months later. It was the middle of the summer of that of 20, I think it was 2012, because it was after we had Twin Galaxies. But he set another score in the arcade, and the only person that I know was there was Lance and Richie, and it wasn't streamed at all. The only video I think that was ever shown was a cell phone recording of the final Bowser fight and where it tallies up the final score.
So it didn't show if it followed the rules or not?
No, but, you know, you had a, you know, duly appointed corrupt as fuck Twin Galaxies referee that was there at the time.
And mind you, this was 2012, and I think the phone that I had at the time was like an Android.
Well, yeah, the recording looked like dog shit. But it showed him getting the over 3 million point score. But don't you think... I mean, I know Richie enough that he would have recorded, if not streamed, the entire gameplay. So this sounded like a kind of backroom, shady motherfucker deal that was going on, especially because...
I agree. Because Richie Knuckles was the one who was doing the Twitch streaming for Billy Mitchell recently, and it looked like he was completely compliant to everybody. So why was he doing this sort of thing behind the scenes for a world record? That doesn't make any fucking sense.
Well, I mean, Richie basically caved into Roy Schilt, like I said before, and we basically made the trackball, the different trackball track, just so Roy Schilt would shut the fuck up and have his missile command world record.
Anyway,
you know,
do you have any other question? Not to kind of ramble.
You know, I think my last question for you would be, you know, if we were to reverse our positions, do you think there's any kind of question that I should be asking you if I were interviewing you? Is there, you know, like anything you just kind of want to say that...
I can't think of anything, really if I was you, to ask me? That's like a mindfuck type question.
Yeah, it is, but, you know,
Let me think.
it's kind of like, you know what, we've been going at this for, you know, a little over an hour at this point, and I figure, you know what, you know, maybe there's a question that, you know, again, I did not, you know, really prepare any questions.
Well, I mean,
for
you haven't prepared any questions, but, like, if I gave you 5 minutes of silence, would you be able to figure one out?
I think, you know, what I have in mind is more just kind of like a follow-up, and it relates to Twin Galaxies, and, you know, let's say the dispute against Isaiah ends up with him not being banned or being banned.
Or
Do
having
you
a
have
score
any
revoked?
kind, you know, like, you know, kind of like a plan for what you plan on doing next?
Ooh, now that one I don't know how to respond to. All right, well, since this is the last one, let me try to figure this one out. Well, first off, I've already talked to Princeton, and considering Isaiah recently got $1,000 from one donation, Princeton told me, and I turned him over to my attorney, or one of them at least. I gave him 2 numbers for 2 different attorneys. One involves heavily with theft, and another one just everything in general. I'm both very friendly with both those attorneys, so I, you know, gave him his number, and he's probably gonna end up speaking to 2 of them at the end of September. So we had this agreement, and if Princeton goes through with talking to them at the end of the month, if Isaiah doesn't want to give Princeton the money by the end of September, or at least some kind of money, like a little, like, forwarding of some amount, like, I'd say the bare minimum of $100, then Isaiah is pretty much going to be sued by me. Not just Princeton, too, but, like, I'm going to be going after him for showing my name on live stream and, you know, getting me indirectly doxxed, you know, like, recruiting all these people, you know, over Twitter, making another witch hunt just for me because he's too much of a bitch to come directly at my throat or, you know, send a full-on legal complaint. Because, let me be honest here, he said my whole video is 99% slander, but he didn't show a single piece of fucking evidence to me to tell me. I told him over Twitter, look, if you show me your video game record of any sort, I will apologize to you if it's a legitimate record, and you can be on your day, and I'll remove my video, and I'll say you're the best gamer in the world. But you need to show me something in my video is a lie and show me the proof behind it. I didn't get anything since then. So what that tells me is he's a complete bitch to go online and cry to Etika subscribers and rim job them, pretty much, live, every day, which is laughable. Now, yeah, I'm not going to censor any of this. This is just straight up how I feel about that. On top of that,
I can't necessarily disagree with you, because I think at this point, because I've known him for so long at this point, you know...
You believe it.
You know, I mean, I have the first-hand knowledge of
what he is like and his mindset.
Shady he is. And how shady his organization is.
And me being having a minor in psychology makes it that much more credible. But on top of that, should Princeton not get his money, I'm going after him for that video that shows my name, his dox attempts, him playing my video back for 4 hours straight, which, by the way, I'm legally inclined to all the money that he earned from that video, which I looked up online that $1 is 25 YouTube views. So he's got a video that has, like, about, I think, 5,000 video views.
Yeah, you get,
so it's like $200
for a YouTube view once you get past that point where you're able to be monetized.
Google said that I would get $1 per every 25 views, but I don't think that's the exact amount. But on top of that, him attacking me and doing illegal shit, which is what he's been doing on Twitter and doing all this stuff. And he can pretend he doesn't know what the fuck I'm talking about, though, but he's too much of a bitch to come forward. I can call him a bitch as much as I want. It's the First Amendment, okay? Like, he can cry a fucking...
stopping you.
Yeah,
I mean,
he can cry a fucking river.
To be honest with you, I kind of, agree with you. I mean, it's just what he is. I mean, I know he's screwed over.
And with
people
Tipster saying,
of
I kind of want to prove
his
Tipster
gaming
wrong. Not to cut you off here, but I want to prove Tipster wrong. He went on Twitter and said that my use of my trademark was fraudulent, and I'm just like, huh? You don't have a trademark, Tipster. You don't get it. It's different from copyrighted material, and that trademarking can be above copyrighted material. Should it be used to slander or do anything wrong without evidence or context? For example, Isaiah, for his 4-hour defamation stream, threatened, quote-unquote, "I'm coming for you, meme troll." That's my trademark, so I'm coming for you. You know, coming after the trademark owner, me. That's a threat.
Yeah, well...
That's slander. He's saying, yeah, I'm going to have you crying in front of a judge. He said everything in my video was a lie. He had a bunch of little kids attack me like it was fucking YouTube in 2008. Like, come the fuck on. Or alts, if he really wants to be that obsessive, which recently, I got a huge wall post on one of my, it was the Empire Arcadia cheating video. It was long as fuck, and I think it was Isaiah on an alt, or one of his butt buddies, and it was fucking laughable, and I just I'm like, who the fuck are you? And I don't care. Have a good day. Like,
yeah.
Like, come on, dude. Like, you're gonna leave. It was like,
well, I mean,
the longest post I've ever seen on YouTube, by the way.
You know, his whole establishment is built on a lie. And I think the old Twin Galaxies was built
on a lie.
On a lie. So, you know, I mean, from where I was and what I saw and how I saw it, you know, I really wanted to kind of do like what the Olympics did with some sports, where it's like, okay, here's the legacy scores of, you know, the old age. They're just grandfathered in, and I don't give a shit about them anymore. But what I'm really going to recognize is I'm going to merge the arcade and MAME scores together and just go, here's the new scoreboard. So every game, you play it on a real arcade machine, you play it on MAME. I don't give a shit. You know,
if I had
the best score wins.
One more chance to reiterate one more thing in with that final question, which that was a really good question to ask me. Should Jace make the final decision to completely ban him or at least remove that record? If he doesn't do either one, I'm going to leave TG and I'm just going to look at it like, look, you guys are supporting corruption. You guys support people trash-talking your company. That's like if I were to make a record on Ocarina of Time, which is my favorite game. I'm not going to lie. It's probably the best game ever fucking made. You know, religiously I play that fucking thing. Like, everybody's got their certain game. That's mine.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say, you know, I'm not too thrilled about most of the Nintendo 64 games, or, you know, I was a Nintendo person for the, you know, the Master System, or not the Master System, the NES, and
I used to be a huge
Super
NES
Nintendo.
fan.
But, you know, after that, it's just like, all right, the Nintendo 64 sucks. I don't care about the game.
A lot of the games on the 64 suck, which is unfortunate, but
you know, and you're paying
tried
like
to be something
$90 for the game on top of it, which made it suck.
But anyway, the iteration I went to make was I'll probably end up going to speedrun.com and try to do some records on there, which Ocarina of Time is more looked at for speedrunning than gaming records. I would like to do something like fastest 3-heart run, or who has a record video of doing a 3-heart run, or something like that. You know, something
of them
challenge running.
You know, one of the things that I wanted to do with Twin Galaxies was actually either buy like one of those speedrunning sites,
and
but I got
combine
into a massive argument with Dave Nelson and one of the other people, and we were debating the idea of should Twin Galaxies recognize speedruns?
Yes. Why the fuck not?
That was exactly.
It's part of gaming. Why the fuck not? If it's going in the record books, who gives a fuck? If they're gonna anti-debate that, then they're fucking assholes that only care about points, or just don't want to keep up with gaming.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, that's how you encourage competition.
Exactly.
Still on a game, like, okay, Billy Mitchell, even though it's no longer recognized, you know, at the time I was, you know, part of Twin Galaxies, you know, he had the perfect score. And that's what he was recognized for, among other things. So how the hell do you encourage any kind of competition
when he's immortal?
Game that, you know, well, it's not even that, but it's like, okay, if you tie the game, it's basically, you know, a kind of unwritten rule that, you know, you basically slot into the next spot. So if you were to pull a perfect Pac-Man game off and be the first person to do it, you would be in the #1 spot. 6 months later, if I go and pull a perfect Pac-Man score off, I would go into the #2 slot, even though our scores would be tied.
But if the chances are that he does get banned or at least that score wiped, there's two things that I'm gonna do. Number one, I have more information on his records that I'm not going to reveal. I'm been withholding it for quite some time. I don't want Isaiah to come up with some fucking crummy defense while I'm talking about it, obviously. There's two of his records I know for a 100% fact are completely fucking bullshit. And probably will get disputed.
I mean, the versus Super Mario Bros.
That is probably one of them, though, but it's not the one I'm targeting.
But I mean, that one's bullshit because it's been a Twin Galaxies kind of rule that the Play Choice 10 and its games were never supposed to be tracked in the first place.
Exactly.
At any level. So all of them should have been invalidated
and thrown the fuck out and not even put in the database.
You know,
I have no idea why that's still been moved to the N64. What was it? No, it was
Virtual Console or something like that?
No, it was ported over to the Super Mario Bros. Arcade version, is what they called it. That score got moved. And then it got placed back in the Nintendo Play Choice 10 magically on its own after I did my video. And it made no fucking sense.
Well,
I have no idea who edited that, but they changed it.
There was 50 or 60 games that were on the Play Choice 10. But, you know, none of them...
But specifically talking about that record before I end this...
And that was a ruling that came down from the iteration of Twin Galaxies, who was the previous owner, where it was Pete Bouvier. And I think he had Nick Meeks, Patrick Scott Patterson, and Todd Rogers as his main board of referees.
Yeah. But the main point that I want to make is specifically just for Isaiah's score for the Nintendo Play Choice 10 for the Mario game. When you really think about it, before I even drop my video, if you go back in the Wayback Machine to like May or fucking April, it will show the normal score. But during the time that I first dropped my video, a few days after that, that score started acting really fucking weird. It went to complete zeros. You could ask Princeton about it. It made no fucking sense, and then suddenly it was fixed. But at one point in time, it moved to a completely different track on its own, magically. It went to, if you try to go to Isaiah's ranking page and look up the leaderboard for the Nintendo Play Choice 10 for his record, if you click View Leaderboard and do Share Track, this is something Starcry Task told me, which I thought was kind of fucking weird. It would send you right to Super Mario Bros. On arcade, and it would show you in the URL. And I'm like, what the fuck? And it would show the whole score. Now, if you try to look at it, it just said 000 on the Nintendo Play Choice 10. But if you hit the search track button with no information in the address bar, it shows the full score on a different game.
Now, see, when I went to look at it, it just showed basically a blank screen with no scores.
And then it got set back for no fucking reason and no explanation.
Yeah.
That makes no fucking sense. Somebody manually got a hold of that record, was changing it around without anybody saying anything, no public acknowledgement, and then it just suddenly gets put back after, what, a week?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
That was the
with
sketchiest fucking thing I've seen.
I mean, with this iteration of Twin Galaxies saying, well, we want everything part of the public record.
But, you know,
And
this is
they can't
hypocritical
even,
because look at what
you
David
know-
Hawkset did behind our backs. Doing that whole email exchange with Isaiah, and his thing was, I wanted to get information out of Isaiah. Well, great, keep it in the fucking dispute. You shouldn't you have just said word for word, and I said this in the dispute, or at one point or another, I've said it, what David Hawkset should have told Isaiah, the first message and the only one, keep it in the dispute, I am not getting personally involved over email.
Yeah.
And that should have been it.
I mean...
Other than that,
was,
if it wasn't for
know,
that, Jace Hall would not have had to fucking step in and drop that entire long post.
Jace would have needed to have stepped in no matter what.
Yeah, but
Because
he wouldn't have had to replace David Hawkset at that point for the collusion.
He's part of, that whole group that makes the decision of, all right, because the way I see basically the votes are basically like trying to pass a bill, and we're like the House of Representatives. And, we vote on it, and, there's a bunch of no's or there's a bunch of yeses, and then they say, okay, we need to really look at this and go, is there legitimacy? And then they actually make a ruling. So all the bullfuckery that's going on in the forums really doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. It's more, okay, can you prove that a max score is not possible without leeching? And I think, in the way of Contra 3, I don't think it's possible without leeching. And I don't care who you are, cheating is cheating. I don't care if it's a little bit, a lot of bit. Once you go into leeching, it's no longer point pressing, which is a legal tactic. Leeching is an illegal tactic because you're not progressing the game in a meaningful way. So, you're just cheating more, and where's the line that goes between, okay, well, I'm cheating, but I'm excessively cheating. So only because I'm excessively cheating now does my score get disqualified.
Yeah, that's, yeah, I had to unmute my mic for a second there, but that is a very good point, because the excessive leeching, I wouldn't call it excessive leeching or leeching. I call this non-forward time leeching specifically.
Well, I even quoted a whole bunch of games.
Yeah.
Well, I think I put two in...
The TG, though, unless they make the rule to change the rule, which Jace has to do that, or Dave Hawkset, or Ninglendo has to speak to them, who's in this Discord.
They even state in their FAQ, and I posted the rule, and I think it's 20A from the FAQ that says, we as adjudicators have the power to determine
what is the rules and what tactic should be banned.
So if they're not going to,
agree or look into what we're saying and not make a rule on it.
All right, because I believe it was the Drifter 18 put a video of him playing the game for
And he's
3
currently
hours.
online.
And, you know, at the end of it all, you know, it's like, all right, he's leeching here, 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 here. But, you know, is he excessively leeching? That's a matter of opinion. You know, if somebody is excessively leeching, is entirely, you know, subjective to the person watching the video. Because you could watch a video and say, all right, well, this is leeching. But if I watch the same video, I go, no, this isn't leeching. You know, I think he's still progressing the game forward.
And that's why we're TG adjudicators, because the rules are not really vague. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this interview up because there's a couple things I got to do, and it's already been about an hour and a half, close to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the time.
I told you this was going to be an interesting interview when I told you weeks ago, didn't I?
Yeah, you know, and I kind of said, you know what? There's not much of
that it wouldn't have
interest
been
that I have.
interesting,
and,
but you know what? No, you proved me wrong.
You know, I proved myself wrong, to be perfectly honest, all the same. Because I'm just like, all right, well, I don't think there's anything that I really know that, you know, a bunch of other people don't know themselves.
Well, I don't know if anybody knew you had control over the website. That's something that even I didn't fucking know.
Well, I mean, I tried to basically hide myself as best I could because it was, you know, the way we structured everything is that you sent a submission to the Twin Galaxies offices in New York. And then the Twin Galaxies office would then send the submission to David, Steve, or myself for verification. And, you know, that was the whole point, was to make sure that, you know, nobody knew where David Nelson was, for example, so that they could go and harass the referee for whatever reason, or know where Stephen Boyer was, or, well, since I was more in the public eye of things, everybody knew that, you know, I was basically at Richie's Arcade. So if they wanted to find me, I was not hard to find, but nobody really knew that I was a referee. I just kind of had myself installed as the moderator of the website, and it was like, okay, well, this kid's just some nobody that's, you know, some flunky, but little did they know I was a lot more than that. And it was the whole perspective and perception that I was going for.
All right, well, I'm going to wrap this interview up because there's a couple things I have to take care of, and thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. If you ever want to do a follow-up, you know where to find me.
Right here.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, I think, you know, there's a lot of stuff, actually, that I'd like to go into more detail, because I know, you know, I kind of...
When I have the questions that you want me to ask, that'll be the better time for it.
Yeah. You know, so, you know, going forward from there, if you ever want to do a follow,
I most likely will, because you were the web host at one point or another, and now that I kind of know that, I'll have new information and questions ready.
I mean, the only thing that I really don't want to go into at any point ever is, you know, like the private archives.
That's fine.
You know, I don't want to go into any of that.
Because you're on an NDA.
Well, the NDA is expired at this point,
right.
Which is why I, you know, went back onto the site, and I'm like, all right, anything I say at this point, you know, nobody can hold me accountable for. I mean, I could just go into the archives and just dump a bunch of crap, but that was a lot of stuff that I had talked to Dave Hawksett about in private. Was like, I'm like, look, I have the archives from 2012 and before, and I don't think it's in anybody's best interest if I post them but I'd like to know what your opinion is on this. And, you know, we had about a 2-hour-long conversation about that in general, among other things. I mean, we kind of agreed that we weren't going to talk about anything related to current events, if you get what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm trying to think, and no matter how much I do at this point, it's like, even if I try to say something to justify just how much information that has already been given to both me and you and to everybody else that's listening to this, it wouldn't really change much unless we know more of like something more serious. But into the matter of talking about releasing information and what's valid and what's not, I think so long as we could validate current events, that's something that should matter more.
Yeah, see, that's really my opinion, is I'd like to see Twin Galaxies
Stop wasting
go
your time on the
forward,
old times.
you know, not spend as much time looking back, but instead
Look forward,
more,
not back.
and just kind of go, okay. I mean, they've done a good job, and I really wanted to say, you know what, all right, there's skeletons in the closet, but what I want to do is just kind of, you know, build a cement tomb, put that closet in there, and just seal it off for eternity. And just ignore it as best I can, and I want to just go no bullshit. You know, all of the bullshit of the past is the bullshit of the past, and, well, that's that.
And that's where it should be. Anyway, this is the end of the recording, and it's almost been 2 hours. Well, actually, probably like an hour and a half, but hopefully it's not that long. Anyway, I'm going to end the recording now, so thanks for coming on. I'll probably do a follow-up sometime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Alright, and that was Freeko, guys.